Okay, today I'd like to talk about some of the advanced features of LightUp, and in particular, getting animations out of the program. So, first of all, one thing that many of you may experience is a slightly slow model as you're rendering. This is because you all love to put in things like, ferns with 50,000 polygons and 200 spoons on the tabletops and things. All those polygons make SketchUp work a little harder. So within SketchUp, there's a couple things you can do. You can go and make it a shaded view without textures, and this is fine when you're space planning. You can also get rid of things like jitter lines and endpoints. Those also take up a little bit of horsepower on the computer. You can replace those high polygon objects with Arch Vision RPCs, those same ones that we used in Revit work in SketchUp, although you need a little plugin to make them, to insert them into the model. They actually look pretty nice too. Anyway, you can also use what are called proxy objects. So if you have, if you just can't resist using that 50,000 polygon plant, you can by all means replace it with a box shape or a cone shape or something like that while you're modeling, and then at the very end when you're ready to render, you can replace that box or cone shape with the more complicated model. This is particularly good for things like if you have a place setting on a table. Just use a rectangle that's the same size or a box that's the same size. And then before you're ready to render, replace out all those components with the component for the place setting. So anyway, if LightUp is slow, excuse me, if LightUp is slow, you can, within the basic render settings, change the resolution to 0.5 or 1x, and you literally just type in 1x or 0.5x. And that will, what that does is it basically changes the size of the image, or the detail, size of the image details that you get. The higher the number, the more detail you get. It's actually a dimension that you're typing in. So the other thing you can do is you can always just move to the desktops. Taking a SketchUp file is a heck of a lot easier than a Revit file because all textures and light bulbs are embedded within the model, so you just need to get that file. You can email it to yourself. IES files, if you happen to have downloaded an IES file from a manufacturer's website, which is highly unlikely, you'll have to copy that. Also, you'll want to do a little non-rendered animation check. A lot of you, I think I mentioned, have this tendency to create walkthroughs that are run-throughs or fly-throughs. They're a little fast. So first of all, if you want smooth animation, you'll want to change the scene delay number to 0. What that does is it means you'll go from one scene to the next scene to the next scene, but it won't stop at all. It won't pause. I tend not to like the pause, partly because it looks very SketchUp-y, and that's annoying. And partly I just think it makes a more compelling, photorealistically rendered movie. So anyway, the transition number, the top number, is how long it takes to go from one scene to the next, and you'll have to experiment when you set up your movie. Again, I may have mentioned that the easiest way to set up the movie in SketchUp is to, save a scene where you want to start, walk forward or move forward, or use the look around tool, and walk a few feet and save another scene. And then walk a few feet and save another scene. Now, some of you might walk 10 feet, some of you might walk 2 feet. So that transition number is one you'll have to experiment. The only way you're going to see what it looks like is to export a non-rendered animation. And that only takes like about 30 seconds, so it shouldn't be a big problem to check. To get those settings, by the way, on the lower right of your SketchUp window, there's a little guy. Little sort of androgynous person. You can click on that and it brings up the model information, I think. Anyway, when you're all ready, the animation looks great, and you're ready to do a photorealistically rendered one. This is called a final burn. So if you're looking at the documentation for LightUp, and actually other rendering programs, that's how they refer to it. And with LightUp, what this means is you're going to change a couple settings in the preferences menu, the cog. That's the leftmost button. First of all, the resolution, you can up that. If you've had a complicated model, it's running slowly, 4x is fine. I've done as high as 12x, 8x is also fine. Depends, obviously, if your model crashes or takes 2 hours to do it, then lower the number. But 4x seems to be a good starting point. You also want LightUp to ignore the cache of calculations that it's done in the past, because you're changing the resolution. You want it to be higher. You also want to uncheck the incremental render button. What incremental render does is, normally in the tour tool, which is when you hit go, it just renders what it needs to show you what's on the screen. It doesn't render corners of the model that you don't see. When you uncheck that button, when you uncheck incremental render, it renders every corner of the model. Now what this means is that you can navigate through the fully rendered model, and it means you can explore bits and pieces of your model and spaces that you otherwise would not do, because you can't explore a rendered model in like Revit. So anyway, the other thing is, make sure you've got interior checked. I don't know why, but sometimes I find I just kind of absent-mindedly uncheck that to be exterior, or I reset the whole thing, and it will not work if you don't have electric lighting in there with the exterior setting. It has to be on interior, and even without any light bulbs whatsoever, as I demonstrated in class, this program can work just fine, but you have to make sure it's set to interior view. Oh, and by the way, you can, in your SketchUp model, you can include or exclude scenes from the animation. Just select them in the scene manager, which you can get by right-clicking on a name of a scene, and include it in the animation or not. So anyway, then hit go. And what you'll see, SketchUp will give you this little readout down at the bottom telling you how far it's completed. And this, of course, will vary depending on how big the model is. Mine that I used as a demonstration took 2 minutes and 16 seconds to render, which is not half bad. And that was at 4x rendering. Now, that was to do the final burn. This second number is what happens when you actually hit the movie button. Okay, so we haven't quite gotten to that point, but the movie button will start it recording the animation. And again, what you'll see on the lower left is a readout of how long it's taking. So keep an eye on that. Don't mess with it. It will say press return to stop. You can do that. SketchUp will then process the movie, or LightUp will process the movie. If you're getting impatient, but generally on a laptop, a high resolution rendered movie will take about 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes on a PC. And you can also, by the way, whoa, come back. You can set it to play a sound on the completion of your movie, which actually is kind of nice, because I think a lot of us kind of walk away from these things. You don't need it to, but it can do it. Anyway, once you have done the full burn, you can come in here and change any of the settings in the capture menu, which usually pops up after you've done the full burn. If not, you can click on the capture menu. But the key thing is that we're interested in are down here at the bottom, which I have enlarged. And first of all, 1280 by 720 is probably fine. If you choose 1920 by 1080, of course, that is the highest definition you're going to get, and it's going to look absolutely stunning on your screen. The file sizes do get a little bit big, though, so 1280 is probably fine. For still images, by the way, the biggest image you're going to get is an A2 size at 300 dpi. That seems to be the largest setting that the program has. A couple other settings, this trigger animation and loop animation. First of all, when you create the animation, it will kind of loop endlessly if you have this checked. I don't like that. I prefer it to just stop. The other thing is that the trigger animation, what happens if this is checked, on your screen you will see the movie kind of running endlessly, which again is a little annoying. So I turn these off. So you check that size and you uncheck these boxes. Then all you do is you click this movie button up here. That's really all there is to it. You just do the settings, you click the movie button. It will prompt you to save the file, so put it onto your desktop or wherever it is that you save stuff. It will be a big image file, so make sure you have space on your computer. And for those of you who are experiencing any technical rendering issues, you might want to do a low resolution, do a 1x movie first. That will take a lot less time, and you can get a sense of if the lighting is working in all the places. But otherwise, do the final one. Now, the other thing that I was going to show you is that you can do stills of plans and even sections using the rendered view of your model. And it's really pretty easy. In fact, for this one, I'm going to switch over to my SketchUp model. And I have done a final burn on this model. So you can see I can kind of walk through it. And I don't really need to re-render anything. I can go up or down, I can look all over the place, and it's fully rendered. Now I even have some saved scenes here, and you can see that if they were not rendered when I saved the scenes, but now they are because I've fully burned the model. Even things like I have an axonometric view. Now the trick is LightUp is a little peculiar. It has rendered this model. We just can't see it because it doesn't have the ability to see through the model without these section planes turned on. So you have to turn on your section plane, and you can see now I have a fully rendered axonometric drawing. Even the wall lights. What's nice is because it doesn't rely solely on electric lighting, I can get a pretty nice looking model render without having to deal with the fact that I'm cropping away all the electric models, even under this counter here. Same with a floor plan. If I wanted to export a floor plan, I could just go to the floor plan view that I've saved. There's no perspective on and all that kind of stuff. I just need to turn back on the section planes, and voila, instant floor plan rendered. Don't need to fiddle with Photoshop or anything else. And I even have some pretty nice graphics on there. Okay, and of course you can make further changes to the view if you want different views of the model. I'll go back to plan. I think I like the plan view best. Turn on my section planes. Anyway, to export it, just like the other images, just click the still button and it will ask you where you want to save it. Just choose a spot on your computer. So pretty straightforward. Let me go back to my slideshow. That is basically it for animated presentations, for creating the animations out of LightUp and SketchUp. The next and final movie in our whole pre-recorded class here is going to be on how to set up those animated presentations.